Welcome to Novelist Spotlight. This is Mike Consol, your host. Two quick things before introducing you to my guest. First, I encourage you to subscribe to this podcast by clicking on the follow button and also clicking on the bell icon so you are alerted to each new edition of the program. Second, in addition to being the producer of this podcast and interviewing novelists, I am a novelist myself. I've written 4 books, 3 novels, and 1 short story collection. In the episode notes, you will find a short link to my Amazon page and all 4 of those titles. Now, on with our program. In the spotlight is mega best-selling author Jayne Ann Krentz, who has written more than 100 novels under 3 different pen names. Jayne Ann Krentz writes contemporary romance suspense. She uses Amanda Quick for her novels of historical romance and suspense. And Jayne Castle, her birth name, is reserved these days for her stories of futuristic paranormal suspense romance. She's a complicated woman, but what a regal name Jayne Castle is. In fact, that's the name she uses on her latest novel. That's called Enter the Nightmare, and again, written under the Jayne Castle name. Now imagine being accused of murdering your husband on your wedding night, but you have no memory of a husband or a wedding. This is how Enter the Nightmare begins. And then the book gets crazier from there. So you can imagine, just imagine. Jayne Ann Krentz, welcome to Novelist Spotlight.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. And I will just start off by saying all those names was not my idea. That was not the plan back at the start. And since I always get asked about this, I want to clarify right now that my one tip, my one piece of advice for any aspiring authors who are out there listening to this is don't go there. Do not use pen names. Trust me, go back, save yourselves.
Wow. Well, what about, you sliced the salami pretty thinly as I read off what each of your different names represents in terms of what they're producing. But there are people who write distinctly different genres. And you're saying even then you wouldn't use a pseudonym for maybe something. I mean, I know I heard a guy interviewed one time who said he writes romance to make money. Then he does the stuff he really under a pen name. Then the stuff he really likes to write is the stuff he wants to make his name with is under his real name. What was the downside of you getting turned into 3 different people?
Promotion. It's in this day and age.
Complicates it, huh?
In this day and age, it's literally impossible to build multiple brands. There's so much product out there, so many books being published on a yearly basis. It's going to be tough to promote 3 brands, and I know I'm doing it.
One powerful brand is that's what you would have favored. How did this happen, though? So you're Jayne Castle, and Jayne Ann Krentz after you got married. Were you writing, publishing novels before you got married, or was it after you were married that you started publishing?
After I got married.
Okay, so you would have used the Jayne Ann Krentz. Is that where you started, with Jayne Ann Krentz, or did you start with Castle?
I started with Jayne Castle, but I managed to sign it away. Back in those days, it was not uncommon in popular fiction, in genre fiction, for publishers to demand exclusive rights to a name. So if you it was a way of tying the author to the house. So if you jumped ship, if you went to another publisher, you had to start over.
Oh, man.
And I did that several times, and that was doable in those days. These days, it's going to be tough, trust me. But Castle name was my birth name. It's the name I lost for about 10 years due to contractual things. But all that's gone. And by the time I got the name back, though, I'd already established Amanda Quick and Jayne Ann Krentz.
So you were able to get Jayne Castle back, obviously, because that's the name on your your new novel.
Yes.
It's so memorable. It like I said, it's a regal name, and it's so memorable. So it would make sense that you'd want to write under the Jayne Castle name. It makes sense in that way. Besides being your birth name.
Yeah, it would be my preference, but now the other brands have established themselves, and so I'm kind of stuck. But to this day, if I go to a signing, I can absolutely guarantee you that a third, 40% of the audience will come up to me and say, either oh, I didn't know you wrote as Jayne Ann Krentz, or I didn't know you wrote as Jayne Castle. I only read your Amanda Quick books. Um, that kind of comment is, I'm used to that now. That just happens with every signing. And that's the problem. It isn't, the problem is that people don't remember three names. They remember,
Yeah. With rare exceptions, I think you're absolutely right.
yep.
Like James
It,
Lee Burke, people that James Lee Burke, famous novelist and so on. But that's rare that you get three names. You're complicating things when you add, have a compound name like that.
well, the compound name wasn't so much the problem. It was that there were three names, three pen names. That's what people don't remember. So they associate,
Oh, I
which
see.
kind of,
Okay.
yeah, they associate they remember the
Hmm.
one name that they found you in, and they're not likely to go find you in the other two names. It's not that the information isn't out there. It's in the back of every book. It's on my Facebook page. It's on my website. It's not lack of information. It's usually lack of curiosity because people tend to read largely by landscapes, fictional landscapes. A lot of people prefer a landscape that they are familiar with. Totally understandable. If you read fantasy science fiction, you probably don't want the hardcore science fiction with the science fiction. And if you read, for example, the British police procedurals, it's a good bet you don't read American police procedurals because they're usually quite different. If you read mysteries, cozies, you probably don't read serial killers. People read when they read for pleasure, often will choose a familiar landscape or one that they enjoy. They know they can go back there. They don't need a lot of information. They just step right into it. And think about how easily you step into the world of Sherlock Holmes. Gaslight, London, fog, it's just you're right there as soon as you open the book.
Yes, good point. Yeah, the that whole milieu, it's just so familiar to. I mean, you see it in movies, you've seen it on. Yeah, absolutely. How did you get the Jayne Castle name back, though? Was this did it time out or was this a legal battle?
No, back in those days, it was still possible to get rights reverted. So books out of print for a while. Nowadays, that's a battle, but in those days when there was not the option of preserving the books forever in ebook format, you could get rights back. And publishers closed. A lot of publishers went down during those years when the consolidation began in New York. And when a publisher goes down, the author gets the books back usually. So
Well,
yeah.
I always ask, authors who come on the program, what's your advice for aspiring authors, and you nailed it right up front. Way to go. Um,
That's why Petey, my public service announcement for the day. I have one other if called upon, but that's my primary one. People don't
well, go
realize.
ahead with that one. What's the other one?
The other one is probably the most useful thing I ever did, and I've in the course of my career, and it saved my hiney more than once, is figure out my core story. And the core story is not the kind of plot you like to do if you like to do mysteries or if you like to do relationship fiction or community found family stories. That's not the core story the way I think of it. Um, I think it behooves an author to know their core story because once they know it, they will realize they can take it anywhere. And their core story should be identifiable, I think, in two or three words. And I can look at mine and go back and tell you it's been there since the beginning. Um, and so the two things I find myself going back to again and again and again are the risks of trust and the necessity of reinvention. My characters are always in those somewhere, no matter what kind of a plot I'm using, those two themes will always be underpinning my story. And if I stray too far and go into other kinds of emotional themes, I lose interest. And then if I lose interest, there goes the book. So it helps to know, I think every author is called to do certain kinds of themes, and that's where your power lays. And I would find those early in my career if I had it over to do over again, because you want to hone them, not soften them.
Interesting. That's great advice. Now, you said if I was doing it over again, I'd do it early in my career. What stage of your career were you at when you had this turning point or this realization?
A catastrophe. I had managed to kill off my career, and I did it with the first early futuristics. This is not the first go round for futuristics for me. When I tried them several years ago, early on in my career, the books bombed. People literally stood in line around the block not to buy them. Um, there was there was no market futuristic futuristic romance, which the lesson there is it's as bad to be too far ahead of the curve as it is to be too far behind. Anyhow, I had killed off my career. In those days, the option of self-publishing was not available. There was no such thing, and it was New York or nothing. And my name was attached to poor sales, which is baggage that's hard to drag from one publisher to another. So I had to reinvent myself. And that was when I'd stepped back from the books that had killed the career at that point, the futuristics. And I said, well, what am I really doing here? And I looked at those books and I realized that the plots was using were amounted to basically a marriage of convenience. Two people who are forced to work together to survive. And if they don't learn to work together, neither one of them is going to make it. That was the kind of the core plot that I loved to work with. And at that point, I realized I could take it anywhere. And the most obvious place to go with it was the historical. And that's when I invented Amanda Quick.
Interesting. So, and you just spent time contemplating. I mean, this came to you. It was something that obviously incubated over time, and you came to that realization that this is really what interests me. This is what drives the story, or what keeps my interest. You had said if you lose interest, the book's dead. You must not lose interest very often because you've written more than 100 novels now. So. That kind of productivity is, excuse me, as I told you, I'm getting over just getting over a cold, Jayne. So my apologies. You are incredibly productive. What's the, you've already given a couple of pieces of advice here, but I'm curious whether, when it comes to productivity, you have a piece of advice for authors who most writers, let's face it, don't feel particularly productive, and most are not productive, certainly nowhere near on your scale. So, what would your advice be for productivity?
Well, I think I am productive simply because I'm addicted to it. If I don't write for a while, I get twitchy. I'm compelled to write. It's gonna happen whether it's my drug of choice, I guess is what you would say. And that's
Describe the addiction. I mean, you
I
get up
need
in the
to
morning and are you just itching to write? I mean, you doesn't sound like you're a procrastinator. A lot of people if find anything to do other than write. It's like, well, I need to do the laundry, or what about my email and this and that? You know that whole routine. I mean, you've heard of it, but it
yeah.
doesn't sound like this is something that drags you down.
Well, it's I don't I all I can say is I get restless if I'm not writing. I feel like I should be. I want to be. That's where I want to be. I want to go back into whatever world I'm working on right now. Um, when I'm working on a book, I'm either physically working on the book or I'm thinking about the book. It's always there in the back of my head. I'm not saying this is a great way to to do the business. It's just that that's kind of how I work. Um,
Yeah,
and I
that's what's natural to you, and you're going with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think every writer establishes early on in their career a natural rhythm, a natural speed, and a natural way they work their way through a story. And part of it may have to do with the fact that I am not good at sticking to a plot. I can invent a plot up front, but as soon as I hit that first page, it starts changing and it never looks anything like the proposal. And I think that the anxiety of not knowing where the story is going to go next is one of the things that pulls me back every day. I need to solve the problem. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Interesting. You know, you said something a little earlier that just reoccurred to me. It had to do with, you should be able to say in a few words what your, the core or what your book's about. And I remember Sheldon, back when he was alive, had said that he was paid, was asked by his publisher, what is your next novel about? And he said, I gave them 3 words, female con artist. And they fronted me millions of dollars to write it. He was getting millions of dollars for all of his books at the time because he
Yeah,
was such a
yeah,
hot property at the time. But
yeah.
yeah, you boiled it down to something extremely simple, like female con artist. So if we go to Enter the Nightmare, what would your phrase be that would just kind of frame it?
This is something I am not good at. I think
Sorry, I know I'm putting you on the
yeah,
spot.
yeah. It pulls on the tropes of amnesia and um and a situation that God, this is not my forte. Anyhow, it pulls on amnesia and the fact that you've got to find the truth about the past or you're going to die.
You write about the past and the future. You studied history at UC Santa Cruz, got your master's degree in library science from San Jose State University after that. You worked as a librarian in academic and corporate libraries. I found this all really interesting. What is it about the past and the future? You obviously have a feel for history, but you're also into the future as well. I mean, and I don't know if you feel like that's something fairly unique to you. Unique's not the right word, but something fairly rare. You think, well, doesn't everybody think about the past and the future? I don't know. What do you think about that? Because you seem to be rooted in both.
Well, I grew up on Nancy Drew and the early Robert Heinlein and Andre Norton, which would be the science fiction influences, and Anne McCaffrey. So I've always read some form of romantic suspense, and that's what I write. The history came last because I was too close to it because I had studied it. And if you get too close to something, you see the reality. It's not I had a hard time getting into the fantasy version of history, which is what it takes to write the stories if you're going to do that kind of setting. And I learned the hard way, or over time, I learned that every era has a myth, sometimes several myths, and you pull on the myth that most intrigues you. So when I finally decided I had to do historicals, it was natural to go to the Regency myth because the Regency romance had been well established. Everybody knew that world who read romance, and it's all about the glamour. It's all about the elegance and the ballrooms and the dukes and the pistols at dawn kind of thing. So that's the myth I pulled on. And once I realized you're just working with a myth, Jayne, you don't have to introduce typhoid fever and the reality of the times. Just stick to the myth. And I think ultimately it's the myth that carries history. That's what we always remember. And that's what people, 1,000 years from now will go back to as the myth of our time, not the reality of our time. So the myths are important in that they are the river that history is carried on.
Well, what about something, say, the Roaring Twenties in America? I mean, is that a myth? I mean, we think of the
Yeah.
twenties as the Roaring Twenties, but is that really a myth, or was that the
Myth,
reality?
myths are based in reality. That's what we have to remember. They're not totally disassociated. They take an element and they carry it. So when I went, for example, I did a setting, I haven't done the Roaring Twenties, but I did do the 1930s. And there's obviously a lot of myths out of the 30s you can work with. One of which would be the the trauma of the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, the hard times. You could do what was happening in New York, more of the Gilded Age type myth. I went to California for my stories, and I went with the Hollywood myth. They invented it. That was their myth. It wasn't something I invented. They created it in the movies. The glamour, the beautiful gowns, the snappy repartee, the the private detective.
The Great
Uh,
Gatsby, yeah.
It's all there. You just pick the one you want and work with it. And some are more exciting to work with than others. And some people
Uh-huh.
are called to write the darker side of a historical era, and others are called to write the breezy side. And so I'm the breezy one.
You know, when you say when you talk about myth and simple, you really were talking about simplifying things. You know, boil it down to its essence. What's the myth of the era? I think that, and I find this in myself. I think this is common with writers. That we overcomplicate things in terms of overwriting things. That we tend to be
Yeah,
more explicit than we need to be, and it's kind of like the reader will get it. The reader will
yeah.
get it, and obviously you have an editor who will say if you need another dot here for them to connect. It's not fleshed out quite enough. How do you regard that? I mean, I don't know if you ever had a phase in your writing life where you realized or felt like, wow, I'm using way more verbiage than I need to.
Okay. I haven't really had that problem, and it's only because I'm a very dialogue-driven author. I hear the stories when people start talking in my books. I am really my, my weakest writing skill is narrative, so I'm rarely tempted to overwrite the narrative simply because I get bored with it. I want to get back to the characters talking, and that's where I get excited about the book. So I don't tend to overwrite. My books tend to be more dialogue driven, and that's the reason why. It's because I suck at narrative, to tell you the truth. It's hard. I would like to take this opportunity to ask that anybody who comes across a paragraph of description in one of my books, that they would slow down and read it word for word because it took me forever to write it.
You want to savor it because Jane put a lot of time into that. So
Indeed, indeed.
savor it like a lozenge. And so what about I was going to ask you later in the interview, but I'll ask you now since you've already kind of broached the subject in your own way. I think that every author has their kind of strength or superpower. There's a lot of different elements um, to writing fiction, such as characterization and pacing and narrative and so on. It sounds like you would say dialogue is your strong suit of the skills that you bring to the writing table or the writing desk.
I think so. Yeah, that would be what I would identify. It's what comes naturally to me, and it's what comes it what it when I hit the dialogue, the book starts flowing.
So if I was at a cocktail party with you, Jane, would you be the one who is chatting away with everybody, or would you be standing a little? Are you a little bit aloof at cocktail parties, or are you the chatterbox?
I would be asking people what they do. My main characteristic, I think, is curiosity.
So you ask a lot of questions.
Yeah,
You talk. You ask a lot of questions. That's your right up my alley. That's what I do. As
yeah.
people, I'm always asking questions. It's the only way you learn. Um,
I think writers, by and large, we are a inquisitive bunch. I think we're a curious bunch of people. I think
yes.
that's part of our that's part of what turns you into a writer. Is
Yeah, that's my wife says that to people. I'll be asking, we'll meet strangers, and I'm starting to ask them questions.
yeah,
She's like, "Could you tell he's a writer?"
yeah, she's right. Yeah, yeah. Don't get too personal. We're just here for a
Yeah, I always watch facial expressions very carefully, and because yeah, because I just feel like everything's on the table unless if I start to see that it's like I'm not the kind of person who does Q&A here, pal. I want to be attuned to that for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Uh,
Read the room.
yes, exactly. Read the face, read the body language, read the room. Um,
But
when
everybody's interesting for at least 15 minutes, right? I mean, that's
absolutely.
that's the problem. They're all everybody's got a story,
But but not only that, that people are dying to talk about themselves. This is one of the things I tell my wife is that most people never get asked about themselves. So most people that I talk to, and I'm sure this is the case with you, they'll just spill lots of information. It's like, wow, he's interested in me, and he's showing genuine curiosity about what I
Yeah,
do and where I'm from and so on.
yeah.
So,
I,
to me, it's not most people. There are the people out there who are guarded, but there are a lot of people out there. It's like nobody ever asked me anything.
Sure. What do you want to know? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm an open book.
and that's probably actually becoming more true because we're dealing with a younger generation that's growing up with very few barriers, very few natural inhibitions about what they'll talk about. So it's
Yes. Yeah. Well, they spill it all in public on social media these
yeah,
days. It's
sure,
you.
I'll
It's
tell
just
you.
kind of like you're not really. You have to live out loud, or you're not really living, as
Yeah.
kind of the ethos these days with young people. Um, when did you start writing full time? Well, actually, when did you know you wanted to be a writer? Were you just a young girl, or was it when you were in college? Or
No, no. I think I pretty much can identify the time when I th even considered writing was when I was reading. I was after college and I was finally reading just what I wanted to read. And I stumbled into it. I went back to or stumbled into or kind of went back to romantic suspense, which had always been the books that I gravitated toward as in my teens. Um, and the science fiction elements and the suspense. I always have a suspense theme. I've always got a dead body in the story. And I was looking for those books, and there came a time, not when I thought I could do it better. I have never thought that, but there did come a time when I wanted to do it my way. I wanted my dialogue. I wanted my kinds of endings. I wanted my kinds of characters, and there was no other way to get them except try to write them out. And once I started the process of trying to create the story, that's when it became very rapidly became an addiction.
and that was at what stage of life? You in your 20s at the time?
Yeah, late 20s, uh-huh.
So what is your single best-selling novel of them all?
Mm,
Do you even know? I mean, there's so many of them.
no, I really don't. I'm guessing it would probably be one of the historicals.
Under the quick name, Amanda
Yeah,
Quick?
yeah. Um, Oftentimes people will produce a book called Ravished. That was the title of the book. And they'll say that's where I discovered you, or something like that. That's where I found you. Um,
Well,
but I don't.
I knew the Jayne Ann Krentz name before we ever talked, and I knew the Amanda Quick name. I didn't know
Oh, good.
Jayne Castle. I didn't know Jayne Castle. That was new to me.
Well, I'm impressed you knew the two of them.
Well, it's the book business, and when you spend a lot of time around books and New York Times podcasts, book review podcasts, and so on. And
You do pick
obviously
up names.
you've got so many out there, so it's a you have a major presence out there. I know it's not quite what you wanted it to be because it's under three different names, but it's you know worked out for you anyway.
Yeah,
Uh,
can't complain.
yeah, yeah. No, I just have to tell you that there's almost every writer out there feels very unproductive when they when they look at your resume. Believe me.
Well, just
Um,
remember, I've been doing this for a while. And and another thing I would point out is that I started out in category romance. Those are shorter novels, and it's a business in which you don't survive unless you're writing three or four a year. So, um, I think that was probably what set my tempo or my writing speed or whatever it was in the early days when that was what you had to do to make it in that end of genre.
that's a good point there. And how long did Enter the Nightmare take you to write?
Every book now takes about 4 months from start to finish.
When you completed well, not Enter the Nightmare, but any novel, when you complete it, do you already have do you then think about your next book, or do you already have a list of ideas that you plan to get to?
No, that's what I never think that far ahead. So that'd be hard.
But it doesn't take you long to find an idea. It sounds like once you complete something, then and you're thinking in terms of my next book,
And
you
yeah,
don't have trouble coming up with concepts.
and well, I will say that one of the big advantages of establishing the three writing worlds, not necessarily the three names, but the three writing worlds, the historical, the contemporary, and the futuristic, is that when I come out of one, I am more than ready to jump into a fresh one. And I think what has kept me going all these years is the fact that I did have those three different landscapes because in terms of plots, you can do so many different kinds of plots in each world that you can't do in the other world. There's stuff that works in the futuristic world that would not work in the historical world or in the contemporary world and vice versa and all that. So when I come out of one book, one world, diving into a new one or the next one, the one that I haven't been in for several months, is very refreshing for me as a writer. And I do think that's one of the things that's kept me excited about the whole writing thing.
What is the greatest compliment you've ever received from a reader? Maybe it's not the greatest, but just give us a compliment you've received from a reader that you value, that meant something to you.
I get letters or emails or things on the Facebook page, comments from people who say, "Thank you, you helped me through some dark times while I was sitting at the bedside." Um,
Wow, that's big. That's
it
really
is.
big because it has to do with their life and getting them through those passages.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm writing heavy heavy fiction, literary fiction. It's just I gave them an escape for a while during a rough time, a little moment, few moments of of just getting away from it, and I value those. I treasure that kind of comment. I'm honored by it.
What gets you high when you're writing? Like
Oh,
when you have a spectacular writing day, you're feeling really good about, what's happening.
I got one scene to pull together. I work scene by scene. Every scene to me is a little story. You know how that works. It's got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And telling that story, that little scene story in a day is that's what gets me excited. If if I thought in terms of the whole book, it'd be too depressing. It's just too.
Yeah, so it's like a series of short stories that all
Yeah,
threaded together. So that's what they say about any big project is
yeah,
break it down into its component parts, and now it's manageable because you're only focusing on one piece at a time.
yeah. And each
Just like a
scene,
jetliner comes together one
yeah.
wire or rivet at a time.
Well, when you write, do you find you're captivated by a scene and you're not really thinking out, you're thinking within that little box, that little scene that pulling it together. Do you write that way or do you have a different approach?
No, I mean I think in those terms too. There's usually these kind of just vignettes or kind of the micro scene that needs to work and hopefully work or change of direction. But yeah, I definitely think of things in smaller parts or component parts as much as possible. It alleviates the load. Otherwise, it is kind of overwhelming when you think in terms of, well, I'm looking at 80 to 100,000 words
Yeah.
here. Well, not don't even think about it right now. Just piece by piece. Or what is that? Do you have a target per day? Is it a scene per day? Is it a number of words or pages per day, or do you not focus on that part of it?
I don't focus on it, but I feel satisfied if I hit like 1,500 words, 2,000 words in a day. Doesn't always happen, but if I do hit that point early in the day, I have permission to quit. Give myself permission to quit at that point. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't really hold myself too strictly to it because you know how it is. Stuff just goes slowly. It's some parts and it's fast in the other parts.
Yeah, that's frustrating too. When that's you asked me that question, and the reason I was a little hesitant in answering is I'm working on a chapter now that's just been a bear, and um, I'm almost done with it, but I really not that happy with it. So I think in terms of well, when I come back around, when I do the rewrite on the whole manuscript, I'll go for it. But do something more rewarding with it. Do you ever write under the influence of anything? Music, caffeine, cannabis,
Caffeine, I
red
guess.
wine?
Caffeine. I use the red wine at the end of the day. That's that's the relaxation part. But the caffeine, and I don't listen to music because I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. If I have music going, I'm going to be distracted by it. Part of me will be humming along, singing. Just I can't ignore it. I can't just use it as white noise.
Right. I get it. I get it. Particularly if it's music with lyrics. I can listen to new age type stuff, but with just instrumental and etheric. What about your writing regimen? Are you a morning writer? Are you evening writer? What time do you rise? How do you prepare for writing? How much time do you put in? I realize it varies because you were just saying that, if you can complete a scene and that's I'm good to now take a break and think about the red wine in the evening.
Yeah. I'm a morning person, one of those annoying people that gets up at 5 a.m. Um, and I would say that my most creative time is the mornings. That's when I'm feeling most energized, I suppose, is the way to put it. Um, so I prefer to do my writing in the morning. I can write anytime, I can write anywhere, but my ideal writing time is those morning hours.
And that's after do you do anything to prepare other than brew a pot of coffee?
Coffee and breakfast. Oh, I read a couple newspapers online and check the email while I'm doing the coffee. So
And then you start your writing regimen, and you will go typically how much time per day if you averaged it out?
probably actual writing time would probably be around 3 or 4 hours max. After
There you
that,
go.
I'm usually kind of exhausted in that sense that writers get exhausted. You know what I mean?
I do, yes. Did you take breaks? There's the I guess I call it the Pomodoro method. It's every 20 or 30 minutes you take a break, or do you just
Yeah.
go straight through?
It depends on whether or not I'm really rolling, but if I hit a slow spot, I'll take a break because that'll often give me a chance to rethink where I'm going. I think that a lot of I've never actually, thank heavens, suffered from what people call writer's block per se, but I have had, and this is for me what amounts to writer's block is writer's boredom. I have suddenly realized I'm just really, really bored with what I'm writing. Um, and that'll be a block that has to be fixed by a whole new and you have to come in at it I have to come in into the story from a whole different point to figure out what's wrong with that. So the boredom factor is my warning that I've fiddled around too much. I'm just going in the wrong direction here. I need to rethink this.
I get it. Um, and do you write 7 days a week?
If I'm not writing 7 days a week, I'm thinking about it, yeah. But I do
Then
I do try to have a life. I do,
of course,
yeah,
you have to meet
yeah,
some people and ask some questions and all that, get refreshed in that way.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you write in the same place every day, or would you just, hey, look, I'll go to the coffee shop today, sort of thing? Or some people are very, just feel like there's a time and a place, and that's where I write. Are you mobile in terms of where you might write that day?
Not terribly. I prefer to be in my office. That sets the mood for me. Um, Usually if I'm out somewhere, there's too many distractions, like a coffee shop. There's the people having an argument next table, and you got to listen. How can you not? Um, on the airplane, there are constant interruptions with the food and the movies and yeah, there's just the office is my ideal.
Yeah, you can immerse yourself in the story and the characters. And speaking of characters, how do you go about creating characters? Do you have a specific process for doing that? And are they? Uh, I mean, there's been times when I've known real people, and I just turn them into a character in the book. Obviously, there's changes to that, but I find that it's easier to write a character if it's rooted in some reality, somebody who I really know, and it's not a complete invention. Do you have a particular method with character selecting and developing characters?
No, what I need for a character. Okay, first of all, I should say that I my characters are based on archetypes, and I am perfectly happy with that. What the archetype needs to ground it is, of course, a realistic backstory and a realistic problem. Um, but I don't think about the characteristics of people I know and trying to put that into a character, um, because my characters are going to be frankly not that different from book to book. I'm going back to the archetypes. My heroes are going to be heroic. Um, and they'll have problems like, everybody else, but they'll deal with them um, in a way that makes them heroes, makes them or the bad guys get to be really bad guys, whatever. I go for the archetype.
Talk about pacing, because that's so important, I would imagine, to any thriller, because, people tend to want to see this move along and certain scenes need to move faster or slower. Do you have a particular approach to pacing your storyline?
I think it's intuitive. Actually, I'd like to ask you that question because don't you kind of know when it's slow?
I feel like I do. Yeah, I feel like I do.
I think we get that from having read so much, don't you? I mean, if you, we, it's not something I think about, but when I look back, I realize it's the conventions, if you want to call them that, have probably been established by the fact that I've read so many books in the genre and so many books between suspense and romance. Those are the two genres that I blend together. And if you kind of do it intuitively, I mean, I suppose you could sit back and sometimes you say, oh, I've had him on the screen too long. Maybe it's time to go back to her. But
Well, speaking of the screen, do you spend time on the Lifetime movie channel?
no, I
There's
don't
a
get.
lot of what you're talking about. I mean, in terms of, I mean, it's not great quality acting or anything like that, but there is the suspense and the romance and the murder. You said there's always a dead body somewhere
Yeah,
in your books, and it seems like that's certainly true of Lifetime
yeah.
as
I
well.
just, yeah, I like that story. I like that. I like romantic suspense. I think it's its own thing.
Do you fully outline your books before writing, or do you have the concept and then you launch into it and you develop as you go?
I do not have the full books. I have a rough outline, and then I start the book and it goes away. I never see the outline again. So, and I think if I actually did try to stick to an outline from the start, I'd get bored with it because, in a sense, with the outline, I told the story. And once I've told the story,
Mm-hmm.
I've lost interest in it. I never go back and reread my own books. I never go, um, I'm always looking for a new story.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a favorite writing quote or a quote about writing?
Just the same one we all have, which is plant butt in chair and write.
There's so many. I did a TikTok video a while back about, I've interviewed, a couple hundred authors now on my podcast. I always ask, what's your advice? And I said the one that just was repeated again and again in one form or another is that it's persistence. That, it's not always the best writer that wins the day. It's the person who doesn't give up and the person who's persistent.
Yeah.
And that's obviously something that's been part of your makeup, just to getting back to the desk day after day and producing work. So let me ask you
Yeah.
about if you were at a dinner party and you could invite any three novelists, living or dead, as your guests, who would your three guests be?
Amanda Quick, Jayne Ann Krentz, Jayne Castle. That's enough.
What would you learn?
Don't use pen names.
So you would kill two of the women there. The only survivor would be Jayne Castle. So I think the other two might want to turn down your invite, but
We
what do
don't
you
need
see?
to,
Oh, go ahead.
I,
Finish that thought.
we don't need the extra trouble. Just pick a name and stick with it.
Yes, yes. Great advice. Um, what do you see as your obligation to the readers? Is there I don't know how much you think about. I think there's a lot of tension between these two things. A lot of writers think about the market. When you think about the market, maybe you're thinking about the readers. Now you have an established audience, so you can think in terms of not so much of the market, but the readers. But then I think a lot of times what authors don't do is they don't just write what is they don't just listen to the voice inside and just write what they feel and be true to themselves, which I think is essential for actually being successful or really making it satisfying is to be true to yourself and give voice to the inner impulse. But
No,
you
I
have a
agree with you.
established readership, so and
I
they
agree with
expect
you.
certain things from you, right?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't think about it. I'm with you. It's like if you're not excited about this story, it's not gonna fly. That's just kind of how it works for me. And it sounds like you're in the same boat. It's very, if I try to sit down and write consciously for the reader, I'd fall flat real quick. I write these stories first for myself, tell the story to myself, and then I just hope like heck that other people can step into my fantasy. And a lot of people don't. We don't have every reader reading our books. But the ones who do, I'm guessing, probably share our core values. And if you meet them in person, you'd probably like them.
Right, right. How has your writing changed with experience? So you've been writing for a long time now, and if you look back on the arc, uh, how has it evolved over time? Well, what have you left behind, and what have you kind of? I mean, you've already revealed a lot of this, Jayne. I realize that. So, um, but I'm thinking in terms of yeah, that arc, that career arc, and where you are today versus say 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
Well, for one thing, I get to do more of the psychic thing, which has always been a secret thrill for me. And it wasn't easy to sell it in the old days. So the market has opened up in that sense for the psychic and the paranormal elements. Um,
In the past, excuse me, in the past, you're saying in the past it really wasn't something that would sell or that book
yeah.
publishers were interested in, and that's changed.
Well, and like the futuristics didn't sell the first time around, but now the market has, we're dealing with readers now who grew up on Harry Potter and Star Trek and you know Star Wars and just different, except they'll accept different things as real, and step right into those fantasy worlds. The same way everybody used to be able to step into the Sherlock Holmes world. Those the fantasy worlds, the paranormal, the psychic stuff, the futuristic stuff, those are all familiar enough now that people aren't afraid to risk because buying a book is an expensive proposition. So you really want to like the world. You really want to know it's a world you're going to be comfortable in before you put your money down. Um, which is one of the reasons that landscapes tend to evolve and become familiar, like the noir landscape for detectives. And where was I going with this?
Well,
I got
well, I was asking about that. They, like you were saying, the heuristics didn't used to sell. The paranormal didn't.
what changed?
Let's,
What changed in my career?
yeah.
Okay,
So
so
that frontier opened up for you over
yeah,
time.
yeah. So in terms of fictional landscapes that I'm allowed to work in, um, those are much broader now. One of the benefits of writing romance and romantic suspense is that romance has always been the stepchild, I guess you would say, of popular fiction in the sense of being respected. And the downside of that is obvious, ain't got no respect, but the upside is that nobody cared enough to make any rules. So the one thing the romance genre has allowed writers to do over the years is invent a lot of different worlds and a lot of different settings. Some work, some didn't, but the invention factor means that there's always been a place for me to go with my story. And I
Hmm.
and I am very grateful for that.
So let's talk about the paranormal for a minute. Do you consider yourself a spiritual person?
I think everybody is. There's a certain sense, yeah, I think so. Not in the sense of a particular religion or anything, just I believe that there are sources of energy out there that we don't always have identified. Um,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
do, and my mom used to say, she was a believer, and you put good energy out in the world, or you can put bad energy out in the world. It's up to you.
And it comes back to you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like physics.
Yeah.
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's the law of karma that the Hindus
Yeah.
believe in, and other Far Eastern religions. It's interesting that you say that about, I think everybody is, because there are people who call themselves atheists, but then I will ask him about, so you don't believe in the metaphysical, that there's anything metaphysical out there, and they usually will not say, yeah, there's nothing. They actually believe in something. What they don't
Yeah.
believe in is the conception of God being proffered
Yeah.
by Christianity and Islam, particularly, I think, Christianity and Islam, which is a really not even a God that you would want to hang out with. It's a threatening, omnipotent being that I'm watching you, and you better watch your step,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And that's not what people believe in, by and large. Even though they might call themselves an atheist, well, that's why they're an atheist. I don't believe in that. So I guess I don't believe in God. Well, you believe in meta, and that's usually how I put it. Do you believe in the metaphysical? I don't ask people, do you believe in God? I'll just say, do you believe in the metaphysical? That there's a metaphysical dimension, and that's always a yes. So
Yeah.
I can see where the paranormal would be something that people can relate to and can embrace in your novels, or just generally in the world.
Well, one of the things that I like to specify in my end of the popular fiction, the paranormal has, even though I get labeled paranormal, most readers in my genre will tell you that for them the paranormal means the supernatural. And that means werewolves, vampires, witches, magic, the Harry Potter kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, I don't do that. I do the psychic vibe. And the psychic vibe, I think, works for my readers because it's just one step beyond intuition. And everybody thinks they have intuition. So the idea that your intuition is a little more than just average, um,
It's not a stretch for
it's
most
not a
people.
stretch. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us something your readers would be surprised to know about you.
Well, I learned to fly an airplane once. It's
Oh, wow.
a long time ago, back when it was possible, flying lessons were cheap. Yeah.
And then you would, well, you just, you got your flying credentials,
I,
and
I soloed a plane and I decided that I was never going to be comfortable. For me, it literally was hours of boredom broken by moments of stark terror. And I will never go back to flying. That was something I did it. I did it because my husband was into it. And my thought was, if something happens to him and we're in the air, I need to be able to take over this stupid aircraft.
yes, yes.
Um,
Uh,
so it
well,
was more of a self-defense thing, but as soon as we sold the plane, that was it.
I got you. Wow. What is your greatest extravagance as a writer or a person? What would you say? Where was an area of extravagance for you?
I love those exotic river cruises, or cruises to, the ocean cruises, places I'd never get to on my own. I love cruising.
Like Antarctica
Yeah,
or
Antarctica,
the
Norway.
Nile River?
Yeah, yeah. Haven't been to the Nile yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah, mine too. I think next year, I'm hoping. And then Antarctica's on my list too. It's I remember I have a friend who's basically, you don't ask him where he's traveled. You say, where haven't you traveled? Because that's a much shorter
Yeah,
list.
yeah,
And he said the two most incredible places he had been, it was Africa and Antarctica.
yeah.
He said Antarctica was just like another planet. And
He's right. I absolutely agree with him. It's another world.
yeah, amazing. And he says if you're not an absolutely immaculate, that meaning the wildlife there, if you're not in immaculate condition, you're lunch for somebody, for some other species.
Okay, there is that side of things. Yes,
Yes,
I
yeah. I
hadn't thought
mean,
about it
it's
that way, but
real life.
yeah.
Ditto for Africa. I mean, it's the same sort of thing. And that was an immaculate environment in his experience that there's just nothing laying around because everything gets devoured by one life form or another.
Nature in the raw.
What are you streaming on Netflix these days, or any streaming service, premium networks?
I adored the Murderbot series that came out on Apple a while back. The one Martha Wells books that made into a an Apple TV
I'm not
series.
familiar with that one. Okay.
Murderbot. Oh,
No.
well, it's a the character is a security robot. Looks humanoid, of course, very handsome robot, and he is has discovered he's become what's the word sentient. He's become conscious,
Mm.
and and then now he has to deal with all these dippy humans who have, who don't make any sense.
They're so emotional. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he is learning how to handle humans by watching daytime dramas.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it's really it's Martha. The books themselves are just wonderful, and the author is Martha Wells, and the series called The Murderbot Diaries. You can find them online anywhere.
Hmm. Um, Tell us about, unless you think you can't do so without maintaining the suspense, but Enter the Nightmare. Off the top, I had said basically the premise, but is there more to say? Obviously, there's more to say about it, but I'm curious
Well, I
whether what else you would say to build it out a little.
well I went into it with the whole idea that the hero and heroine are ultimately going to find themselves in a futuristic version of an escape game. And the escape game is deadly. If winners, not a lot of winners. Um, so they're going to have to trust each other and figure out how to survive the escape game in order to survive. Also, there's a
Mhm.
dust bunny, and the dust bunnies are my equivalent of, like the best psychic dog you ever had. So
Now, dust bunnies to me are the things that when you haven't vacuumed your home, they accumulate. Is that what you're talking about, or is
no,
there another?
I'm talking about little futuristic animals that people call dust bunnies because when they're all fluffed out, they look adorable. Like,
Oh,
they're all fluffy, like sort of like picture a super fluffy English Angora rabbit, except that it's basically a little predator. It's an omnivore. It's not a vegetarian. Um,
right,
so the thing they say
right.
about dust bunnies is by the time you see the teeth, it's too late. But they are very fierce and loyal companions to their humans.
Interesting.
It's my
Okay.
version of putting a dog in the story. What can I say?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's obviously working for you. Listen, Jayne, I don't know whether to call you Krentz or Castler. I don't know who I'm talking to, which of the three. You're, like I said, a complicated woman, but really appreciate you taking the time coming on the program, and congratulations on the new novel. And you're full of great advice. I mean, I really am
Well,
pleased with the with how much advice an aspiring writer would cull from this conversation that we've had. So thank you for
I've
that.
made all the mistakes, so you don't have to make them. Just
That's exactly it, isn't it? Yeah. Pay attention to the people who came before you.
yeah.
They're full of experience that you can benefit from. Well, thank you again for coming on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've had a great time.